In upcoming EastEnders episodes, George Knight grapples with a shocking revelation about his birth parents. Learning that his adoptive father, Eddie Knight, was responsible for his biological father's death, George faces a dilemma when Eddie demands a character witness in exchange for information about his birth mother. As the courtroom drama unfolds, George's decisions impact his family's future. Meanwhile, a mysterious woman's arrival adds another layer of suspense. The storyline explores the complexities of identity, heritage, and the consequences of family secrets. BBC EastEnders Spoilers tease George Knight twist which changes everything after bombshell admission. EastEnders will air a shocking twist next week which changes everything for George Knight and his family after he recently learned the truth about his birth parents. The EastEnders will air a huge twist next week as everything changes for George Knight. George has just learned that his father Eddie Knight was responsible for the death of his biological father. He had assumed he was of Jamaican descent, but as the truth came out about what really happened to George's biological parents and the fact they were actually from Ghana and not Jamaica as he thought, it has left a huge hole in everything he thought was true. Next week on the BBC soap, George is clearly struggling to cope, and when the DNA tests come back to say no matches have been found, he is crestfallen about the fact that there is no trace of his birth family. Elaine and Cindy implore him to tell the kids the truth about their heritage, which he reluctantly does, and they are horrified to learn the truth about what Eddie has done. Gloria calls the pub, begging George to give Eddie a good character witness, so he heads over to speak to them and warns them never to make contact with him or see him again. Eddie tells George that he's got some information about his birth mother, but says he will only give it to him if George gives him a character witness in court tomorrow. The next day, Elaine asks Johnny to talk George through the legal implications of giving such a statement, but he's still unsure what to do. After a heart-to-heart with Linda, he goes to court and makes a decision based on his gut. What will he do? A mysterious woman arrives at the court, leaving Gloria distracted, but who is she? George takes to the stand, but what does he say, and is it good or bad news for Eddie? Elsewhere, Elaine remains worried for George following the trial and urges him to calm down for the sake of his kids. However, they are interrupted by an arrival at the Vic, which changes everything, but who is it? Colin Salmon, who plays George, explained how his character feels he has no choice. George now feels he has no choice because all other avenues are closed, and Eddie has this nugget of information to share. I like to think of George and Eddie as always in the boxing ring, testing each other out. Eddie knows George's buttons, so he's making a play in doing this. It's a brilliant war strategy that leaves George with no choice, he said. EastEnders Spoilers see George Knight receive news about his biological mom as Eddie pulls horrific stunt. Warning, spoilers ahead, it's Mother's Day in next week's EastEnders episodes, but George Knight is left in turmoil. The week kicks off with Cindy Beale excited about celebrating the special day with her three of her children, Gina, Anna, and Peter, being together for the first time. However, over the Queen Vic, George is struggling to cope after he's informed that no DNA matches have been found for him and there's no trace of his birth family. Elaine Peacock and his ex-wife Cindy insist that the time has come for George to tell the girls the truth about his heritage before they head to Jamaica, and he reluctantly agrees. Gina and Anna are horrified when George shares his history and are furious to discover the truth about Eddie and the trial. As viewers will know, George recently discovered his adoptive dad Eddie killed his real dad in a frenzied racial attack. Eddie was only being nice to his adoptive son George so he would be a character witness and give a defense statement in court for the historic murder to get him off the hook. But George had disagreed to take part. Later, Gloria calls the Vic after being coerced by Eddie into begging George to be a witness. George goes to see Eddie and Gloria and tells them to never contact him or the girls again, but Eddie tells George that he's got information about his birth mother and will only hand it over if George gives him a character witness in court tomorrow. George is in turmoil as he mulls over Eddie's ultimatum, leaving Elaine and the Knight girls desperately worried for him. Elaine reels in Johnny Carter to step in and talk through the legal implications of George giving the statement to help her fiancé to make his mind up. But George is still conflicted. Following a heart-to-heart with Linda, George decides to trust his gut and heads to court where Gloria is distracted by the arrival of a mysterious woman. George arrives at the court and takes the stand, but what will he say? The next day, Elaine is worried sick about George following the trial. Cindy joins forces with Elaine to try to make George calm down for his daughter's sake, but the arrival of a visitor at the Vic changes everything. But who is it? These EastEnders scenes air on BBC One from Monday, March 11th. Want more Albert Square gossip from My London? Sign up to our EastEnders newsletters for all the latest and greatest from Walford here. Please subscribe our channel.